Just for the sake of time, we're waiting on one extra member, but we'll go ahead and just get things started. Catch up when he gets here. I think he's on his way. Yeah. So, oh, there he is. Perfect. Come on down, Tom.
He changed seats around.
Yeah, since I'm chair, I wanted to have a more centralized meeting. So, and there's no other meetings today. So, we'll go ahead and call to order the Public Works and Sustainability Committee meeting. It's just after 6 o'clock. Today is March 27th, and first item up on our agenda tonight, I'll also note all members of the committee are present. In addition to Law Director Ernie Vargo and Public Works Director Chris Gordon, we have members of the public from the Sustainability Department and from help with us here tonight relating to both of our resolutions on the docket. So thank you all for joining us. And first up on the agenda tonight would be the approval of minutes. If there's no objection, the minutes from March 6th will be approved. Hearing no objection, those minutes are approved. Moving on to our first resolution, which is 2023-10, a resolution authorizing the mayor and public works director to enter into agreement with Cuyahoga County for the operation of a public utility within the boundaries of the city of Lakewood. So we have with us here today again Mike Foley, Director of Sustainability, former state rep, and soon-to-be Lakewood resident, I'm happy to say. So congratulations on that big decision. And I'll turn it over to you to give us a quick briefing on this resolution and what it would do. I'll also note I had a great conversation with Sean Leininger, who couldn't make it today, who fully supports this and says that it's critical to our climate action plan that we have tools like this and this type of public utility to allow us to do projects to accomplish that plan. So, Mr. Foley.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Mike Foley, I'm the Sustainability Director for Cuyahoga County. Thank you, Chairman Rader. Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to talk about this a little bit. A year and a half ago, the county kind of pulled the trigger. We had a number of discussions around utility issues, creating microgrids in the region and in the county. We were working with the city of Cleveland at one point about a downtown microgrid, and for a number of reasons that just couldn't pull the trigger on that one. But through all those discussions, we kind of looked at, we think this is important work. As climate change is occurring, there's going to be stronger storms, more power outages, there's more opportunities for things like cybersecurity issues affecting utility grids, electric grids. And so being able to both support businesses and residents, but also be able to brag about this nationally is something that we think is an important thing for the county to be able to talk about. So we actually looked at the county charter, and because we are we're a little bit different than most other counties. We're a charter community. We have home rule authority. We kind of looked at our charter and said, hey, my gosh, we've had the ability, more so than any other county in the state, to create our own county utility. And so this kind of idea, kind of percolated. We talked to county council, and they were interested in this. So September of 2021, we passed legislation to allow us to do our own utility. And our idea is that we want to create these microgrid districts in different parts of the county where there are interested participants, interested cities. One of the components of the legislation said that wherever we operate our utility, we need to get agreement with the city we want to operate in. Right now, we have 4 agreements. We have an agreement with Euclid, Cleveland Heights, Brooklyn, and Brook Park. So Lakewood would be the 5th. The first 3 are around we've got these industrial areas in those communities where we actually have we've drawn out some plans where we think that are going to work. Well, we'll be able to keep power on. Power goes down, we'll be able to keep power on for large manufacturers, large off-takers of power in kind of the industrial sector. And do it with local generation of clean energy, local battery backup, smart switchgear components. We'll also be taking some power off the larger transmission grid, so we'll have to take power from, we'll have to build our own substations. But there's a Department of Energy grant out there right now that is due at the end of May, and they kind of like this idea. They've encouraged us to apply it, and they would pay for at least half of kind of the upfront cost to build out these microgrids, which could be about $100 million for both Brooklyn and Euclid. We think it's a good way to kickstart kind of the work we want to do. At some point, look, I'd love the county utility to have as many customers as possible in the county. At least starting off, though, we're looking at kind of these commercial industrial areas, centers, to kind of begin work. So that's the idea, is that we really want to encourage clean energy development, resiliency, and we think because we are a county, we're a government utility, we're not subject to the First Energy's been very successful going to the Public Utility Commission and getting non-bypassable riders on everyone's bills. They also charge at the transmission level, so you have three kind of cost sectors of your bill: generation, what creates the energy; the transmission, which brings energy across state lines; and then distribution level locally. They've been they've made a lot of inroads into being able to charge non-bypassable riders at the distribution level, but the transmission level, they charge really high rates as well, especially on peak load demands in the summer. So we think we can get around that and make kind of the electricity we sell as affordable as possible to off-takers here. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. And I do want to say we are a baby at this. We are making, I don't want to say we're making this up as we go. We have just hired a utility operator, Compass Energy Platform, who brings this great engineering firm. They bring their own money to help develop this. So we've got a company called Generate Capital that would be bringing money to help build this stuff out. The way those guys get paid back is through the sale of power over long-term power purchase agreements. So there's no kind of upfront cost to either the county or to customers of the utility. So there's this kind of, as you buy power, you're just getting an electric bill that helps pay for the upfront cost. So we think we've got a decent model here. We've got some pretty smart folks working with us, and our hope is that we're successful and that we look back on this in 5, 10, 15 years and say, hey, that was a good thing we did. So.
Great, thank you. Quick question, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues, but so why specifically Lakewood? We do have an industrial corridor, and I love this idea of being able to potentially tap into this microgrid or create microgrids around there. Any thoughts on projects around our industrial corridor, business corridors, or, I mean, I'm personally really excited about the opportunities for residents, the city itself, expanding our EV charging network. We're thinking about doing solar, contemplating some resolutions for doing solar on some of our parking lots, things like that. Could this utility help there? What projects might work in Lakewood, I guess would be the basis of my question.
Yeah, so I think, you've got the kind of industrial corridor up by 117th and Madison, where, especially initially for us, we want to minimize the large number of off-takers, potential off-takers. So we're looking for kind of first sets of off-takers that have a lot of load and maybe 1, 2, or 3 meters, right? So that we're kind of getting practiced at doing billing and responding to service calls, things like that. So those are, not that we think we'll have many service calls, by the way, but we're trying to get at least kind of practice at developing the utility with a small number of large customers who have a large amount of load. But eventually, look, as I say, we want to build this thing out as much as possible. So municipal streetlights, right? Serving municipal buildings, eventually residential, right? This kind of whole concept of community solar, which no one's really kind of figured this out yet, but because of our flexibility, we're not subject to the rules of the State Public Utility Commission, and we've got a lot more flexibility in order to do kind of intricate or kind of cooler things, I guess, products. So those are things that I want, as we develop, I want smart people to kind of bring projects to us, and I think we're going to be flexible enough to take them. So
in other words, community solar isn't allowed at the state level. However, you can circumvent those state rules and do your own version of it. Even if the utilities wanted to, they couldn't because they're subjected to these laws and rules, which you wouldn't be, right?
Correct. We're not subject to the Public Utility Commission
Right.
rules. So basically, our county council becomes like our Public Utility Commission.
Makes it very flexible, which I like. And a quick note on like those riders and things. I for work, I went and broke down my utility bill. 28 separate charges that you get, all kinds of tariffs. And there's probably even more than that. They combine some of them into single lines. There's probably 30 or 40 different, potentially 50 different. And then that's just for residential. You go to industrial, you got peak demand and all kinds of different things, which would love to simplify some of that, or at least explain to people how that works. So I'll stop there. Do my colleagues have questions? Mr. Bullock, since you introduced this with me, and I appreciate your support. Any thoughts? Mr. Baker? Mr. Bullock?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well said. Glad to join you in this legislation, Director Foley. Thanks for your leadership. We've participated with county, this is regionalism. You know, the Plain Dealer likes to, editorial page likes to needle elected officials and leaders all over the place. Where's our regionalism? Where's our joint services? We're doing it with the county in this area, and this is not the first time. The solar panels above our heads were done with the county master contract, for lack of a better term, not just on this building, but 3 other municipally owned buildings. So we're in year, it's got to be 4 or 5 of those solar systems in operation now. So this is another good example. You know, we could, I think, create our own Lakewood municipal utility in theory, but the law director to your right may thank us for proposing not that, but instead contemplating participating in a regional entity like this, so that the costs, the expertise, the soft costs, the risks are pooled or shared, you know, and we can join a broader effort. There are probably also economies of scale, I would imagine, that are benefits. So Lakewood's large, but not very, very large, and I think it's accurate to say that the more that more is better when it comes to paying off electric grid investments. Is that accurate to say? So in other words, we're positioning ourselves, if we were to move forward with this legislation tonight, to take advantage of some economies of scale, regardless of what the project may be or what the power supply may be.
No, that's exactly right. So, you know, one thing is, by doing this at countywide, there's a lot of interest in what we're doing nationally. I mean, we're the first county in 100 years to create our own county utility. We're the first, like, microgrid specific kind of, or microgrid focused utility in the country that there's been. You know, we did a request for information, just asking over the summer for folks to just kind of give us ideas or thoughts or, you know, interests on how they think we should operate this thing. We had over 43 responses from national and international companies. We had, companies from Europe who said, "Hey, this is kind of cool. You guys should be doing this." So, there's people who want us to succeed, I think, and I think it's interesting enough that what we're doing is valuable, not just for what we're doing here, but because it could be a model nationally, right? And other places could take advantage of it. You're right, Lakewood could start its own utility. The nice thing about what we've done, though, is that we're bringing some really smart people who are, we're trying to think through, do a lot of the brain damage, I guess, right now to kind of try to figure out how to make this stuff work. And they're bringing money, so they're bringing their own money to help build out. And so the larger pool you have, I think, of potential projects, potential cities involved in it, the more resources come with that projects, that funding opportunity, I guess. So
okay,
right.
So being a part of a larger entity means it's probable that the pool of possible benefits is better. It's broader and at a better cost to ultimately our residents. So to be clear to my colleagues and to the administration, whom I'd certainly want to hear from when the chair has a moment, this is a proposal to create an administrative tool, a legal and administrative entity today, or to join one that exists today as soon as the legislation would be potentially cleared and legal. But that tool could do any number of things, as we've been partly discussing tonight. No decision has yet been made about exactly what shape or form that would be just yet. Probably in the 1 to 3 year time frame is when we're talking about the first projects. Like Councilman Rader, I'm excited about this possibility. I think it's accurate to say that today, thanks to technological advancement of solar and things like smart thermostats, where you can program your home to use power in the middle of the night, when in theory that should be a lower cost to everybody in terms of dollars and fuel burned and emissions and all the rest. There's more potential innovation today than there has been for 100 years in the energy sector. If we unlock that possibility, we get stopped by state regulation and monopoly utility economics. And so there's all kinds of excitement and drama and corruption. There's a recent Ohio Speaker federal corruption case that just came in the last couple of weeks around this. So by adding a new tool that is more responsive and tailored to Cuyahoga County and Lakewood, the potential is there at least to unlock some of this innovation. That's the upside. My parting comment would be to the sustainability director that so we have some industrial in Lakewood, but we also have a lot of commercial office and commercial multifamily residential. And I think that is medium-large power load in engineering terms. So even if in the early years we're not talking about single and two-family home service, we could nevertheless, our downtown Detroit Avenue area has got a lot of power demand, and so does the Gold Coast, which is the densest area. I think it's accurate to say Lakewood would not be the densest city between New York and Chicago without the Gold Coast. So there's some investment that could make sense there, or microgrid could help resiliency there. Certainly there's residents there who are aging. It would be awfully nice to reduce their power outages. If we can help those condo associations facilitate clean energy investments and affordably supplied EV chargers, all to the positive, right?
Yeah.
So that's even though that's a residential use, that's a commercial potential, I would hope.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, that's a good point.
Good. Mr. Baker, any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Director Foley, for being here. And this is all, I often on this committee, I'm with two people who do this every day. And I'm just someone who is a lawyer, and I work in the public sector. And I will say that utilities generally still somewhat confuse me. So I can only imagine what the average member of the public feels like when we're talking about these issues. And Lakewood, to the point about home rule power, gives you the ability to do a lot of really incredible things. And the Cuyahoga County is the only chartered county in Ohio, so you have some superpowers. The city of Lakewood does operate at least two utilities, one the sewer, and then the other one is water, and we operate those in different ways, right? We treat our own sewage, but then we bulk buy water from Cleveland to then distribute to residents. What I am interested here, and so someone who's not in the industry, but someone who can absorb difficult concepts. So let's say the correspondence that came with this resolution seemed to indicate that this was the first step, to kind of like opening Lakewood up. It sounds like then, if this resolution passes, then it enables the county to then solicit customers in Lakewood, and you would likely choose high power generating, less meters. So you'd essentially, if it were a private sector, you'd be picking off the best customers. Okay, so that's helpful to understand. I think I get that part of it. And then I guess from a high level, you said there's a couple parts. There's the power generation, there's the transmission, and then there's what brings it into people's houses or businesses. Is this the last part of that the county's doing? So oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so we will be a distribution level utility. So First Energy, CEI is the First Energy distribution utility in Northeast Ohio. So we will be competing with them for customers. They're not going to be happy with us, by the way. So, but we will run lines. We will, distribute the electrons once they come off the transmission grid, or those electrons that we generate locally. So we can also generate our own electrons through solar, wind, fuel cells, natural gas, gensets, things like that.
Yeah, I was tangentially involved with the solar farm in Brooklyn that you guys did, and the old landfill. So that's an exciting project, and great use of, former landfill property. So you will be running your own transmission lines, at least local transmission lines?
Distribution.
Okay, transmission is,
The interstate lines. right.
okay, got it. So what I'm looking at right now is a distribution line out this window.
I think so.
Okay, yeah, it's two wires on a pole, okay.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you guys start talking about this stuff,
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't fully understand it, and so I appreciate you walking through this with me. So then I guess, is there other steps that would require council approval, and perhaps this is to the administration? So this kind of opens Lakewood up. It gives our businesses and residents and multifamily structures and the ability, or the county, the ability to solicit them as customers, and then they can, on the free market, do that if they want to. Is there anything else the city council would have to do in order to push this forward more?
So, the lines that we want to run, we want them to be underground, right? So we want them to be protective from storms or cars running into poles, things like that. So there's probably rights-of-ways issues that we'd need to discuss with Lakewood. I mean, there's engineering and design work that'll have to happen. We'd have to get approval from the city to get those, operating. So those types of things will have to happen. But this is kind of the basic thing. Give us the authority to operate, and we come in and design kind of what the microgrid looks like or who customers are. And I think we'll, outside of just kind of the regular permissions through rights-of-ways, I think we've got the, I don't think there's anything else the city needs to do. I guess one thing that we will be doing, so I have to think through this, is there some revenue stream that comes back to the city of Lakewood, right? So as we develop this, let's say we're paying, customers are paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour, right? Some portion of that goes back to the developer and, the engineering firms who've done all the, and the financer up front who's put the money in for the build out. Some of it's coming to the county, so it's like our own little rider to help us with, our, management of the system. And is there some money that comes back to the city of Lakewood? Those are things that we have to work through. We're not there yet, but that'll probably be on a project by project basis, and part of it will be on the economics of the project. But it's one of the things we're talking to both Euclid and Brooklyn about right now is can we put together, as we develop these projects, can we put together a fund that may be used just for energy purposes or clean energy purposes or energy efficiency purposes or, things like that. So those are things that we could talk about later on down the road when we're closer to actual physical projects on the ground.
Thank you. And also, so I've noticed you have, kind of Brooklyn, Brook Park, Cleveland Heights, Euclid, Lakewood, all touch City of Cleveland. I'm assuming you're making other inroads in other communities. I'm thinking about particular communities with a, commercial industrial base, which kind of seems to be what you're looking for.
Yeah, in the first set of projects, we thought that, as we were kind of designing this or thinking through it, we thought we needed Cleveland Public Power infrastructure to tap into. And I think I've been disabused about this notion over the last 6 months or so. I think I thought we would need substation access that CPP has. So that would mean that we wouldn't have to build a new substation, and there's already substation access to the transmission grid. But actually, as we're kind of thinking through this, I think we're just going to build and own our own substations, and we think that the economics of that aren't going to be that much worse than tapping into CPP substations. First Energy owns a bunch of substations. We just don't want to get in those issues with those guys right now. And either way, I think we would just want to build and own our own substations.
Well, and certainly, I'm sure these are things that are going through your head, but the county already owns lots of property in the county. Some of the rights of way are county rights of way, as opposed to city rights of way. And you have a public works division, that you could likely create a subset of that work on distribution issues. So thank you. I think I understand the issue better. I am excited to see where it can go. I've been working with my colleagues on this committee to, help make it a little bit more understandable for a resident or a business owner to go solar. It's not easy for folks that aren't in the industry that fully understand it. So trying to do our best and work with the administration and some of the council staff to make it easier. It does seem odd to me, and I've read, a lot out in California even where, the utilities are fighting against, the ability for you to basically like you have to get battery, capacity in your home, because if you send it back out to the grid, they don't want to reimburse you for that, even though you're essentially generating power, because it goes against their business model. And so I'm sure you and the law department at the county are preparing for First Energy to do everything they can to stop you from doing it. So I just hope you guys have good lawyers there, and I know you do, to handle it. Because I'm sure it's not only litigation, it's going to be, legislation from your former colleagues down in the State House, to change the rules to mess with you a little bit. So I'm sure you guys are ready for that, though.
Yeah, those are things we're not, we know they're going to be coming down the pipe. We don't know what they're going to be yet. Part of this, by the way, is just getting access to the transmission grid in and of itself is complicated. And so PJM is the entity that runs the larger transmission grid in the East Coast corridor. And so that's complicated, and so we've got some good attorneys who are just trying to think through how do we get access to the transmission grid. And there's if we want to put power on the transmission grid, there's like there's not even you can't even get on this waiting list right now. If you're taking power off the transmission grid, which is probably what we're going to do or end up doing, then that queue is a lot shorter, and it could be 6 to 8 months, things like that. So all this, there's a lot of complication. It's way too complicated. To your point, it's just this isn't easily understandable, and so you need some folks who have kind of gone through the wars with this, a couple of times. And I think we're lucky right now. We've got some good folks who kind of get all of the complexities that exist in the country right now and in the region. So
Yeah, I think it's intentional.
I agree.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Wolf.
Thanks. Councilman Baker, I've often thought that at the PUCO, the Public Utilities Commission, which governs utility law, they intentionally speak hieroglyphics so that the only other people who know what's going on are attorneys at specialty law firms. It's just the way it is. So to follow on Mr. Baker's good line of questioning, so today or tomorrow, if this were to become law, if we were to pass the proposed legislation, none of the poles and wires we look at as we walk around Lakewood could be used to serve a customer by the public, by the county utility. Is that correct? Because they're owned by other companies, other entities. So you would need, before it's a practical reality to solicit a customer and serve a customer in Lakewood, you'd need your own infrastructure, or at least rights to lease or something.
Yeah, I mean, practically correct. So we want to do underground lines. We don't want to use the poles for the resiliency component of it. I guess theoretically we could engage in some sort of eminent domain action, against the current pole holders, right, owners. I'm not looking forward to that right off the bat. They're trying to minimize the legal issues,
Sure.
the issues out there. So we would design it so we would build underground distribution lines, and which also leads to maybe there's fiber issues that we could support. One of the Compass, who's our who's our utility operator, has a good relationship with some company that does high-speed fiber lines, and maybe there's ways that they pay for half of the build-out or something, just so they can get access lines. Those are things we may need to bring to you at some point.
Certainly,
so,
yeah.
Like that.
The other question I had is, for governance purposes, do you contemplate having, city representatives who are participating in your countywide entity as part of the board or an advisory committee of some type? If you did one for one, you'd have the Knesset be a very large, because of all the aforementioned local governments. But nevertheless, I could see the value in some kind of consultation and, input by the constituent communities. Ultimately, it's a county. It's county run. It's county authorized, et cetera. It's going to be county funded, but it would be. I could see the value of some version of that, whatever that looks like.
No, I think that's a good idea. I mean, right now, we've kind of got these 3 sets of first projects that we're focusing on, just because we've got some money out there, and you know, there's customers who want to join, and we've kind of done initial design work. But I think you're right, and I don't know if we put enough work into that component of it yet. How does this look long-term? Should there be board members from each city that have an operating agreement with us? Or, you know, you're right, some sort of sounding board or something like that, where we meet frequently and talk about what's going on. I want that, it's not in our legislation that we went to the county council with, but I think it makes sense for us to have something like that. I think it makes sense for the utility to, you know.
I mean, are the bylaws or something that could exist in bylaw, but you're not a corporation, are you? Or are you?
No, we're part of county government.
We're
an arm of the Public Works
your
Department.
division
right now.
of the county government. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bullock. I'll tell you that one of the things that I'm most excited about is the fact that our current utilities aren't super invested in or care deeply about renewable energy. So I think this is a great opportunity to bring more resources locally. And the fact you've already done that, like Mr. Baker mentioned, in Brooklyn, capping the landfill, 5-megawatt solar project there, potentially wind. There's all kinds of things we could do that other places can't. So, I mean, this opens the doors. And as the resolution states, you know, this is just the beginning. Thanks for pointing that out. You know, it doesn't mean you have to operate, and to the legality and in fact, I want to make sure Ernie Vargo has a few minutes if you have any questions or anything you want to say on the record, but this isn't supplanting any type of agreement with any other entity. It's just allowing a new entity onto the playing field, and we're not saying, you know, no one else can take part, and we can certainly grant other agreements later on to other entities should they want to. It doesn't preclude anybody from playing, right? So, utility or otherwise. So, anyway, Mr. Vargo, do you have any questions or thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director. Just to reiterate what was just spoken, this resolution, as I understand it, as it reads, authorizes the city to enter into an agreement. Doesn't require the agreement. So the agreement would have to be acceptable to both parties, obviously. And if there is not a meeting of the minds, then there is no agreement. And this resolution simply authorizes the agreement to be entered into and gives the requisite permission pursuant to the Attorney General opinion that is cited in here. That is your understanding as well, Director?
Oh, hey, actually, embarrassed, I don't know that I haven't read the resolution. And I just want to, if it follows what we've done in Brooklyn and Euclid, then kind of the resolution that's passed has been our kind of, you know, ability to operate in those cities. So we haven't done anything separate other than, you know, outside of the resolution that was passed. You know, that. So I need to probably go back and look at the wording of the resolution just to double check. And if we need to, then we go back and do some official other document.
For the record, it's the resolution that was sent by the county, and they said it was the same as the resolution passed in other communities, specifically Brooklyn, I believe.
Yeah, and so in those communities, we have not done separate documents. We've used the resolution as kind of the permission to operate in the city.
Sure, and I see that this is permission. I'm just reading the technical language. Says that the mayor or director of public works is hereby authorized to enter into an agreement. So on its face, it is speaking to and contemplating a separate agreement. So I'm just stating what is clear, and we look forward to discussing that agreement, obviously, and facilitating it.
I see. Yeah. So once, let's say we have a project, right, that we come to the city of Lakewood with, and you come to us with, and that at that point we're creating a separate agreement around what that project looks like. Yeah, I think we're fine with that. That makes sense. We understand that. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee? Makes sense for me. Mr. Baker, Mr. Bullock? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and, oh yeah, Mr. Bullock. Did you have a-
Well, I appreciate Director Vargo's point. I do think it would be valuable to have a master agreement to specify operations. Good fences make good neighbors, as we're learning with another institution in town, which has nothing to do with county government. So, and it's possible that the an agreement with the city of Lakewood might contain language about what we were just touching on, like how does input take place? How does it take some kind of form? I don't know. Director Vargo, are you in a position to, do you have a model template agreement that we could, from the city of Lakewood's end of things, initiate and make it to Director Foley and his counterpart, your counterpart at County Government Law Department satisfaction?
We do not have a master. We would certainly look for the parameters to be presented to us by the county. All of those items you just mentioned, Councilman, and that the director mentioned, underground cables, underground lines, all of those will obviously require cooperation and agreement from the city. So it looks like there are multiple items that the city will have an interest in negotiating and working through with the county. And this initiative will be subject to those agreements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a collegial conversation between good partners. I just invite that we take that additional step. And you know, I think it also could be helpful because we contemplate this being in place for a decade or more, and it's good that time has a way of flying, and so, you know, the people sitting in these seats may not be here in a few years and that kind of thing. So memorializing our agreement could I think, be wise. Thanks. Sorry to add paperwork.
No. I think you're right. And so, yeah, we've been using the resolutions that have been passed by council as permission to operate in the city, but I think once we get to specific projects, then I think we're going to need to sit down and walk through exactly, spell those out, kind of in an agreement. I agree.
Yeah, thank you. Makes sense to me. You know, we do this occasionally where we pass giving the authority to the mayor, and having that sort of stamp of approval of the council and that hurdle out of the way also can attract potential investors, things like that. You know, it's one less thing, one less process, one less month you'll have to spend getting one more approval. We're already giving this, I think, our full-throated support. So at this level. And again, thank you, Mr. Fargo. Thank you, Mr. Director. Without further ado, I move to recommend Resolution 2023-10 to the full council meeting next for adoption.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any more conversation on the motion? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? The ayes have it. That motion passes. Thank you for being here. We'll move on to the second and last, but not least, certainly. Come on up. You can sit here if Mr. Foley's leaving. Bye. And yeah, come on. You can each have a mic. How about that? Plenty of mics to go around. This is actually an ordinance. I think I misspoke earlier and said there were resolutions. This is an ordinance, 2312, that would approve the new agreement with the HELP Foundation. So welcome. Why don't you go ahead and turn on your mics and state your names for the record and the organizations you're with, and I'll probably just turn it over to you to talk a little bit about your organization and some of the work you've done with the city, and we'll talk to the law director too about any of the changes that we need to know about in the agreement. So.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Leslie Quilty. I'm the Chief Vocational and Employment Services Officer with HELP Foundation, located here on Sloan Avenue in Lakewood.
Good evening. I am Erin Henning, the chef for HELP Foundation at the Sloan location.
Cool. Well, great. Why don't you give us a little bit of an overview of what HELP does and how long you've been working with the city at this location?
Sure. So HELP Foundation was established back in the mid-'60s. I think we've been in business since 1965. Back in 2015, we acquired Cornucopia, which was the Nature's Bin on Sloan Avenue. We still have the location, the old McDonald's on Sloan, that operates as a training kitchen. HELP Foundation, we serve roughly about 700 individuals a year, both transitional age youth as well as adults that have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And the programs that we oversee that pertain to the city of Lakewood are our vocational employment services. So we do back of the house training at our commercial kitchen on Sloan Avenue, and we also have an agreement with City of Lakewood to operate their cafe, the Bistro, at the New Cove Community Center. And for, I believe this is going on our 8th year, we have operated the concession stand at Lakewood Park, and we also leverage that as a training site for youth with disabilities. So maybe a youth at Lakewood High School that has an IEP, and they are looking to have their first job experience. And it's just a nice little 5 weeks, 20 hours a week. We have job coaches that work side by side next to them, and we're expanding that as well to the Bistro. So we have an individual signed up for 5-week session. Hopefully we'll have one in the second 5-week session at the Bistro as well. And we have job coaches work side by side with them, help with skill development, hard and soft skills development, and we have individuals work alongside Chef Aaron in our kitchen and learn everything from knife skills to cooking, baking, cleaning, shopping, and someone has to sweep the floor and clean the bathroom as well. So we get to learn everything back of the house as well as front of the house.
I don't.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both for taking the time out of your day to be here. And thank you so much for what you've been able to provide for Lakewood through your students and for giving them that opportunity. I think that's just so important and cool, unique, special about our community that we've had this, I think, wonderful partnership. So this specific piece of legislation is just an amendment of the lease, I believe, to extend it through April. The lease we have, is this Herr Director, Law Director Vargo, pertaining to both the Foster Pool site and the Bistro? Is that correct?
No, this just applies to Foster Pool,
Okay.
based on my understanding.
Great. And this extends it just through the end of 2024. I see one small change. It looks like the termination by the city is just a title that was headed or added to one of the, this would be 17 cancellation, A, cancellation by the city. I'm guessing that's just added, or is that underlined to score that it was changed, or is it just underlined in the original?
I believe the language that was changed, if I remember correctly, Law Director, is just changing Cornucopia to Help Foundation. We've since divested of that legal name.
Okay.
That's right, and Mr. Chair, the dates were changed, but I think the ellipses or the dots mean that those provisions were not changed from the original lease.
Very good. So this extends it another year. I don't see any other changes. Any comments, thoughts from my colleagues on the matter? Mr. Bullock.
Thanks. Thank you to Help Foundation for being here and being in the presence of a real-life chef is great. And thanks for the quality food. So the couple things. We don't have in front of us the original, this is a comment to the city administration. We have an amendment to the lease which refers to the original agreement, which we don't have in front of us. So I'm flying a little blind here. The services that I also recall, in addition to Foster Pool, there's the two-way facing concession stand right there that serves people in the pool and people on the playground or just walking by on the path, which is actually both sides are very important. And I want to talk about hours of operation there. And then we also do the bandstand services. There's a food service for some evening events and or some Sunday events, at least as originally envisioned, when there's Friday night movies and Sunday afternoon concerts. And I don't know, because I regret to say I haven't consistently had the chance to attend a lot of those, how consistently we're providing that service. We'd like to. With the main concession stand at the pool on both sides, I'd love to hear the hours. And the punchline of where I'm driving with this is we've got so many kids, families, joggers, bird watchers, people who practice battling medieval swords with foam rubber swords. Everybody under the sun comes to Lakewood Park, which is exactly as it should be. And so getting a drink, uh, as a father of little kids, the goldfish, those are like manna from heaven. And even a healthy, so anything from a light snack to a healthy, lunch/dinner would be great. We're about to quintuple our attendance because we're bringing half of Great Wolf Lodge, all the water slides and everything are going to be built right there at Lakewood Park. So you're going to have people coming out of your ears. We're going to have them coming out of our ears. This is all good, but can we handle the capacity? What's our plan for that? And you have the wonderful, admirable mission of providing not only service but vocations, and so the staffing is not something that, staffing for anybody is hard these days in this economy. You've got an extra qualifier where you want people who you train to be there. So are we able to flex up to the need when there is need, especially in warm, hot days? What's our game plan there? And then if you think that realistically there's going to be only so much staffing, could we have a flexible arrangement where we backfill with other supplies of staff when your clients can't do the work? Or not they can't do the work, but they may not be available for a shift. That's a better way
Right.
of saying it.
Right, great questions. I think we anticipated, I'm still on, right? We anticipated that there was going to be a higher volume this coming summer with the beautiful new pool. We are Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 8 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. are the hours. The training hours for the transitional age youth with disabilities, they are 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday only. We also hire typical youth because part of the training program through Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, it's called the Summer Youth Work Experience. We need them to train side by side with typical employees. And so we do hire what we call typical youth, so non-disabled youth, to also work in the concession stand, and they work those hours of operations. And then we have site leaders that we bring in as well. So they're usually non-youth, sometimes youth, depending on their maturity and skill level to manage other employees. We bring them in and they're there all operating hours as well. So we have not had a request since I've been with the agency for doing anything with the bandstand, but I do remember stories about this food cart that got wheeled out around Lakewood Park before. But we're happy to adjust our hours to accommodate any special events, things like that. Definitely, we did see an uptick last year compared to the summer before due to COVID. The summer of COVID 2020, well, the big summer of COVID, I should say, we had limited hours. There were reduced hours because there were reduced pool hours, and there just wasn't a lot of traffic when the pool was closed. But we do get a sizable amount of consumers coming through the park side, for the park window as well. So we're flexible. In our conversations with